Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 3rd of May 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail in the course of the show. We'll begin with today's importance as far as press, as far as journalism, as far as our work is concerned, because today is the World Press Freedom Day. I'd refer to what our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said on the occasion. He said that he pays a glowing tribute to journalists across the world, particularly those in Pakistan, for the commendable work that they are doing to inform and educate the people. I think these are two very important aspects: informing and educating the people. The environment in which they work is often full of challenges and risks, and yet they never falter in their responsibility. This, of course, is important, but at the same time, there are certain sections that take advantage of it, others that continue with all the solemn oaths that they have taken in order to be responsible and to be ethical in their journalism. We'll be talking about that in detail during the course of the first story today. Our second story today concerns the climate change, and of course, two important statements that have come. The first from our Climate Minister Shahid Rahman Sahaba, the second from our Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Shahid Rahman calls for dispelling a growing climate criticism across the world, stresses the need for moving beyond talk and taking urgent action. And this is very important. She is in Germany as we speak right now at the ministerial dialogue of the Petersberg Climate Dialogue in Berlin. She has said that climate change is, quote unquote, breaking records and collective actions are falling short. At the same time, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Sahab has also sought immediate measures amidst the fast changing climate scenario cycles, which he says have forced poor nations to suffer catastrophic and unimagined losses. We have seen the example of Pakistan as well last year as a result of the catastrophic floods. We still are reeling as a result of that. This is going to be our second story. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns our Prime Minister again, who is leaving for the United Kingdom to represent Pakistan at the coronation ceremony of His Majesty King Charles III. He also talks about the British-Pakistan relations that are rooted in shared history and multifaceted bonds that have only grown stronger over the decades. We'll be talking about that as part of our third story. And our final story, ladies and gentlemen, comes all the way from a Belgrade classroom where a 14-year-old boy has shot his teacher before opening fire on other students and security guards. 8 students have been killed as a result of this, and a security guard has also been murdered as a result of that. This has been confirmed by Serbia's Interior Ministry. This is a trend that we are seeing going since quite some time, started in the United States and now escalating in other parts of the world. We'll be ending today's show with this story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the World Press Freedom Day that is being observed today. It is to create awareness about the importance of press freedom as well as the role of journalists in promoting democracy and defending human rights. We've been joined by Pervez, Jamil, a Mir senior journalist, to talk more about this. Mir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. First of all, congratulations on the World Press Freedom Day. I know the importance of today, and I know in the context of all the work that senior journalists like yourself have been doing and contributing towards the society. How important is world press freedom in this day and age where there are so many things happening, when there's disinformation, when there is misinformation, where there's artificial intelligence that somehow, somewhere misguides people through wrong information as well? How important is the responsibility of journalists like yourself in this day and age?
I think the first thing which we must do is to understand the story, understand the nature of the story, and then report it. Just to report on a hearsay is an irresponsible attitude which we see all over the world. I mean, there are stories which get fabricated, which get enhanced, and which represent the actual nature of the story. So I think the first thing is responsibility, understanding, and at the same time, being totally objective and not biased. Because when reporters or journalists become biased, the story automatically gets concocted into a different frame. And that is something I think which we need to avoid. And of course, report objectively.
Whether it be Pakistan, whether it be India, whether it be the West as well, do you see much of objectivity or bias when you look at the world and journalism across the world today?
Well, I mean, I hate repeating myself, but the Indian media has always been one of those of full of negativity. Rather being, I mean, I'm not saying the entire India. There are lots of channels which do report, honestly and correctly. But because of our long-standing political situation between the two countries, our case is always misrepresented on the international frontiers, and that is something which India should avoid, because at the end of the day we can change our friendships, but we cannot change our neighbors, and that is something which they need to realize, that it actually affects both of us, not one. So either we do it or they do it, because if they do it, there'll always be a reaction. So there shouldn't be a provocation, which encourages a reaction. So that is one of the things I think which is quite sad, I would say, because it doesn't hurt the countries; it hurts the people at large. And because of that, in the UK, where I am, there are no problems with the Indians at all, none whatsoever. Yet in India, we see a lot of problems, we see a lot of issues which really shouldn't be there. So I think responsibility, as I earlier said, is a very important part. Being totally fair is also another thing, because until and unless we do not just build trumpets on both the sides, we won't get to any happy solutions.
That's true. And when you talk of happy solutions, I also hate to repeat myself, Mr. Mir, but the fact remains that whenever a press is objective or not, it also is backed by an enabling environment by its government, or enabling environment by certain important countries that back that respective country or those journalists. Do you feel that it is extremely pertinent and important for all the world leaders, for all the important countries, to give an enabling environment so as to have objectivity when it comes to news stories in any part of the world?
Absolutely, because you see, it depends on the leaders, no matter who it is, where it is, and in what country. The most important thing is that the journalists in question must be giving the right information to their leadership, because when that leadership gets the right information and not some sort of a propaganda, then the leader will react in that manner. But if you feed him something, he'll only come out with what you fed him, and that is something, again, I think, which needs to be avoided. Look, journalists, at least sensible ones, have a great responsibility. They have to be responsible, because they have a very, very crucial role to play in building up bridges between the countries. And if we start with, I'm not referring to ourselves, but if somebody comes along against us, rather than we going out and speaking in the same context, it only spoils the broth, as they say. But I think, I hope journalism improves. I hope, because that's the only way to build bridges in countries like, particularly in Pakistan, and of course in India, where the leadership is not sitting. At least we want them to sit, but on the other side, there are other hawks who perhaps don't want it. So I think it's a great responsibility on part of the Pakistani media. I would so much as to say, and even on the sanity which prevails in some of the Indian media, that they should come out and build bridges, because we need to be building bridges. We cannot continue, even after 75 odd years, to be on the same path. The world is, as they say, they don't make land anymore, but they're making a lot of people, and we need to be talking about those people.
Mir Sahab, the fact also remains that a lot of journalism across the world, whether it be in the East or West, whether it be in the subcontinent or in Europe or the United States as well, is somehow or has become politicized of late. We are seeing the way Fox News has been working over the years. We've seen how other news outlets across the world have been working as well. How important is it to depoliticize journalism and journalists across the world, so that they can work in a more authentic and a more, how should I say, truthful environment?
Well, you see, when we speak about superpowers, they always want to, have their say through the media, and then they wait for a reaction. How does the reaction come? if there's a story in any of the major newspapers in the United States, we pick it up and we holler it out in a different manner. Now, that is something which we need to avoid. How do we know that, whatever we read in New York Times or Washington Post or anywhere else, that that's the gospel? No, it isn't. Because they have to, they have to, portray their viewpoint onto the world, being, well, the so-called policemen of the world. But we need to be more responsible in how to absorb that story. And that is a very important part. I mean, I was very fortunate enough to be we took the first media delegation to Moscow. Believe me, they had no idea of what Pakistan thought of Russia. We explained to them because they were so much indoctrinated by the Indian media that, it was amazing. It seemed that they were actually cloned during the Soviet period. But now, after our interaction with the Russian media, I thought we opened up a lot of gates. And I think that's the kind of exercise we ought to be taking, at least from Pakistan, where, our senior, members of the journalistic community, they'll be going out and visit the European Parliament, visit the Congress, visit the Houses of Parliament, and of course, going to Moscow. I think that is something which we need to be encouraging more.
You know, Mir Saab, it's interesting to note that you want an attitude like this, an environment like this to be promoted. But the fact remains that the world is very different from what we would like it to be, whether it be on the front, whether it be behind the lines. But there's a certain narrative that is being promoted in any section of the world that promotes that part of the world or certain points of views. Can that be changed in the days or in the weeks to come? Do you feel the process is going to be slow and steady, or do you feel this is an attitude that you've seen since the last few decades and will continue in the next few decades as well?
It has to change. We haven't forgotten Dr. Joseph Goebbels, how he propagated and, brought out the propaganda of Adolf Hitler. And yet there was a different story, completely different story. We saw genocide, which was totally not reported. And on the other side, there was the Voice of America giving out its own stories. And that happened in the Vietnam War. It happened all over. The British here, we had it in the Falkland Wars. So that propaganda will always remain, because every country has to look after its interests. But as you say, in the current, I guess, atmosphere and climate, yes, I totally agree with you that we need to be playing, the journalistic community, a very, very important and a very, very serious role in trying to build bridges and trying to bring the correct picture. And of course, reporting what is the actual truth, and reporting with objectivity, I tell you, will get results.
I hope so. I really hope so, because I'm on your side, Mr. Mir. The fact also remains that there's a huge trend of silencing dissent when it comes to any part of the world. Why are people so afraid of an independent media?
Very, very good question. Countries who do not wish to be criticized can never develop. Countries who cannot take criticism on their own can never develop. Criticism, it doesn't mean they're enemies. They're, because they care for you and they criticize you for something which perhaps in their eyes is not the right picture. So the incumbent governments, no matter who they ought to absorb that rather than retaliate, rather than being, being hardened up on their comments. I think we need to be again talking, and this all ends up in a dialogue, not on a monologue. A criticism alone, is not, it won't suffice. And whereas the reaction again won't suffice. So there has to be a meaningful dialogue and understanding dialogue between the incumbent governments, between the journalists, and that is where we need to your question, that is the avenue we need to be taking to take the countries forward. What's wrong in criticism? What's wrong with it? Democracy is all about criticism. Democracy, as they say, for the people, by the people, of the people. Well, where does that maxim go? So we need to be following democracy to its health. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, there are lots of, I would say, even mitigating circumstances which sometimes prevent you. But national security comes first. That has to be of paramount importance. Our own interest has to be, no matter what country, their own interest has to be, right up to the top. But at the same time, as far as a global and diplomatic interests are concerned, they need to be absolutely positive.
Now, Mr. Mee, you talk of national security. It's an interesting point that you've raised. When it comes to national security or diplomatic concerns or points of views that certain countries in the east or the west, the global north or the global south have, do you feel that they also want their media to tilt towards that definite national security concerns of that part of the world, whether those concerns be objective or not?
Look, national security, no matter who it is, where it is, how it is, it's of number one priority for any government. I will give my reference, to your question, my answer. That, for example, in Pakistan, what we do is we praise the military, then we go and criticize the military, and we think we've done a great job. No, that that is one arm of our state which needs to be left alone. You do not touch that, no matter what it is, because then you are, inadvertently playing in the hands of your adversaries, and that is something we need to be thinking seriously. So much as the judiciary as well. I mean, we need to be absolutely, there are parameters. There are always parameters, because if we ourselves get into that mode, don't forget the other side, or no matter who it is, they'll also start, taking action, and then perhaps reaction, and then of course things get from worse to bad. So I think that is something, the priority on those lines, as far as state security is concerned, that is very, very important. Just to make a story is not enough. A story playing at the, with a national interest is not a good sign for any journalist at all.
I totally agree with you on that. Now, speaking of press freedom and press freedom indexes, Pakistan has moved up a couple of notches. India has gone down a couple of notches as well. When you look at the United Kingdom or the European Union, because you're currently in England as we speak, how do you view the national security objectives of the United Kingdom, and how the media in the United Kingdom is playing up to those objectives? Are they following the rules and regulations? Do you feel that people understand the importance of press freedom and how to be responsible at the same time as being free and independent?
Absolutely, yes. Here we have a lot of Indian media, Bangladeshi media, Sri Lankan media, United States, and European media. They're all here, and they all work under the ambit of the Ofcom. You do something, believe me, one call, well, I wouldn't say a call, one letter, a written letter to Ofcom will encourage an immediate investigation. I've gone through it when I was running the television, channels here. We used to face them, because if any of our anchors was out of bound, there we are. And so has the Indian media. You don't cross those parameters in England. You don't. Ofcom is very hard. We've been fined 3 times, £15,000 each, and then with a final warning of revocation of your license. So they don't take any, as they say, nonsensical view or a lenient view of how the media operates. I think this is how we need to be doing it in Pakistan as well. I know in Pakistan, there will again be criticism, oh, you're gagging us up. No, it is not a question of gagging up. It is a question of responsibility, to your basic question. I mean, the media, if it is not responsible and just, goes out of hand, somebody taking one side, the other one taking the other side, it doesn't work like that. Here,
But Mr.
you
Mee,
can't have
I'd like to end, and I know this little note, there's one thing to take a side or the other. There's another thing to cross boundaries and cross all boundaries of ethics and, how should I say, trust or respect for the other. I think we can have different point of views, but we need to remain under certain boundaries whenever we speak on any issue, whether it is for or against. And unfortunately, sometimes, whether it be in Pakistan or in some other countries, people do not know what those boundaries are, and conveniently cross those boundaries at one pretext or the other, and that comes to disastrous results. I hope that the press in Pakistan and in other countries will become more responsible, will inshallah become more objective in the times to come. We can only stay optimistic on that. Mr. Mir, thank you so very much to have joined us, to have talked to us about the importance of today's day, that is a World Press Freedom Day that is being observed across the world. I'd just like to end with what Antonio Guterres said. He called for greater solidarity with media persons. He said disinformation, hate speech and deadly attacks against journalists are threatening freedom of the press worldwide, and the freedom of the press is the foundation of democracy and justice, and it gives us all the facts we need to shape opinions and speak truth to power. With freedom comes responsibility, and we need to remember that as journalists. Let's come to our second segment, that concerns climate change. Of course, we have had two important statements of late, the first by Shahir Rahman Sahiba, who's the Minister for Climate Change, the second by our Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Sahib. To talk about those, to talk about the importance of climate change and how Pakistan is shaping up as an important global partner as far as educating and informing the world as far as the repercussions of climate change are concerned. We've been joined by Sarmad Iqbal. He's the head of Policy Advocacy, International Rescue Committee in Pakistan. Thank you very much, Sarmad, to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to talk climate change and to talk environment with you, because you understand that much better than so many others, including myself. Climate disasters, global impacts of those climate disasters have been aplenty. We've seen what has happened in Pakistan last year as well because of the floods. We are still reeling under the after effects of those floods as well. Do you feel that the world has taken enough measures to curb warming or sleepwalking towards a collective suicide or a climate suicide, so as to speak?
Well, I would say thank you for having me. It's been long since we spoke on the subject. Absolutely not is the answer with regards to the climate action that we talk about. Yes, we are sleepwalking towards a disaster. Yes, we are sleepwalking towards many other things that are in the pipeline because of our inaction, incapability to respond, our insensitive approaches, insensitive behaviors. And that's one thing that we need to talk about, that we need to target when it comes to actually addressing the impacts. And I believe countries like Pakistan and those who are suffering the most from the impacts of climate change need to realize that, and most of them have realized that external measures or external funds would not be something that would be that we'd be able to respond to with regards to addressing the impact. So I think it's a very grave situation, although I don't want to sound pessimistic, but that's how the reality of the situation
or
is.
Apocalyptic for that matter. But the fact remains that so many reports have come, our country has produced so many reports that we've presented in COP27, in COP26, at all the important regional and international moods as well. The fact also remains that if we just refer to the latest report by the World Economic Forum, its Climate Risk Report 2023, it talks about the climate risks that will transcend national boundaries and cannot be effectively addressed by one country alone. Pakistan cannot address the issues that are happening in Pakistan. It is the collective responsibility of so many countries that result in what has happened last year in Pakistan. What should be and what are the regional approaches when it comes to cooperation between countries for climate adaptation?
Well, there are two schools of thought for it. One says that regional approach is going in a right direction and the countries are speaking to each other when it comes to water resources, when it comes to clean drinking water, when it comes to fresh drinking water such as glaciers and other stuff. But there is another school of thought which says there's certain caveats attached to these discussions. Because as we have read quite a number of years ago, that the next wars would be on resources. Water is the prime resource and it's depleting. I was reading a report that last year the Arctic melted for 1.62 cubic meters, and that's really alarming. The ice is melting, the ice cap is melting, the water level is rising, and it's so much more that is coming along. And if you look at Pakistan, our fresh water is depleting as well as being wasted. as well as being non-utilized, as well as being contaminated, as well as being extracted for non-commercial purposes or non-effective purposes, I would say. So there's a lot of things that we need to change, and that comes with behavior change as well. So we need to actually focus on behavior change of people.
Well, you know, when you look at behavior change, to be very frank, Sarmad, we have gone to COP27, we've gone to other important fora, we've managed to, you know, accumulate the collective approach of the world towards mitigating the effects of climate change. But this said, collective action is still very short of actual deliverance, and that is something that has been highlighted by Shari Rahman Saiba at this climate summit that was at the Petersburg Climate Dialogue in Berlin. She said the climate change was breaking records, but collective action fell short. Do you feel we require more of non-traditional thinking approaches?
Well, as I've been saying for the past couple of years, that we definitely require to revamp our thought process, revamp our approaches to programs, and leave the conventional approaches and adopt more innovative approaches with regards to changing dynamics that we are faced with. The weather patterns are changing. Can we not do something to store that water, that the water that just flows away, that is just wasted? Can we not do something about it? Can we not do something about protecting our communities, protecting our agriculture land? We are talking about the government taking measures for ensuring bumper crop, but with this rising monsoon trends, the standing wheat crops are being affected. Wheat is being devastated, like the wheat crop is being devastated across the country. This is going to lead to food insecurity. And in my last program with you as well, I've been consistently saying that we are going to be faced with the hunger approach that
you know, in
that
so
the
many
world
countries
is seeing
across the
right
world,
now.
whether it be related to climate change or not, whether it be Sudan, whether it be Afghanistan, whether it be other countries, or even Ukraine, you know, food insecurity is something that is alarmingly increasing with every passing day or every passing week, and climate change is dynamically, you know, adding to this food insecurity as we speak. The World Bank Group's Country Climate and Development Report for Pakistan, it has revealed that Pakistan will need $152 billion for adaptation, $196 billion for decarbonization over the next 10 years. How, in your point of view, can we garner these resources?
You know, program approach is the best approach to garner these resources, but programs with conventional thought process or conventional program planning is not going to help us. We need to actually bring in innovative ways and new technologies which are being adopted by countries to make their deserts into green zones, to make their desertified areas into something which is producing food and ensuring food security for their people, for their countrymen. Now, for Pakistan, we have vast areas of land which are barren. We could utilize that. Why can't we bring in new technology? The MOCC, I believe, is working on harnessing these partnerships with global partners to bring in new technologies, new innovations, and the same goes for National Agriculture Research Council and the organizations like International Rescue Committee, who are operating in Pakistan for over 3 decades. And they're trying to bring partnerships which are technological partnerships, so that technology transfer could take place very easily. However, having said that, technology transfer is not an easy job when it comes to actually bringing it into Pakistan.
You know that better than I do, in fact, as far as technology transfer is concerned. The World Bank also estimates that Pakistan's GDP is going to decrease by 18 to 20% by the year 2050. Do you feel the climate crisis can stall progress on economic development and poverty reduction in one way or the other, or in more ways than one?
Well, there's been considerable reports that have come out which have stated that $1 invested right now in building resilience of people would contribute to saving $100 worth of damages that could happen at a later stage. So if we take that paradigm, if we take that approach, then yes, we need to actually start investing in resilience building, investing in innovative cropping patterns, investing in innovative solutions to address the social dynamics, as well as bring up or uplift the social fabric of the country and communities who are faced with such disasters. And especially right now, Sindh we've seen as a hub of disasters because it's at the tail end of Pakistan, but Balochistan is suffering recurring floods due to monsoons, and once the flood ends or the monsoon ends, it's going to be desertification because the fertility of that land is gone.
But you all remember the report that which says that by 2025 Pakistan might be one of the countries to be severely hit by drought.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I pray that it doesn't happen, because the Pakistan cannot bear the brunt of this changing ecological patterns and the impacts on the ground as well, because it's going to lead to huge displacement, mass migrations, and a lot of other challenges as well, which comes with ethnic and tribal context as well. And at the same time, command and control over resources would lead to social cohesion challenges within the country. And that is why organizations like us are working on addressing the root causes of it, and trying to promote harmony between tribes in terms of harnessing the resources of the nature that the nature has given them, such as water sources, such as agricultural land, such as how do we actually manage the timelines of water distribution within communities, and then plan a lot of other things. So social cohesion is one of the must thing that we need to adopt as part of the programs.
All right. Also, Sarmad, I'd like to understand the progress as far as the loss and damage fund is concerned. We were hailed for being behind it, and of course a lot of countries supported Pakistan. But how can we operationalize this loss and damage fund at the earliest? Because countries like Pakistan need the support.
My comments and my questions and my points have always been that pledges are being made at the Geneva moot. How would they be materialized? When it comes to COP27, what would be the loss and damage transfer mechanism to the countries with regards to resources? And that has still not materialized even after 2 years. This is still a question for the global community to take forward this course and try to finalize the action plan as soon as they can. Because if the money doesn't come in, the countries are going to suffer.
Who should we blame? Who should we put the responsibility?
Well, I think it's a collective responsibility of everyone. One, the people that are giving funds, they're giving funds to the Green Climate Fund or any other fund that is established for the loss and damage. However, the countries that are yet to receive the funds, they don't have a say in terms of disaster or in terms of managing or developing the mechanism that contributes to transfer of funds to the country. Then we have global challenges with regards to FATF and money transfers and laundering and stuff, which is also hampering the transfer of funds to countries which are severely hit. And unless and until we address those challenges, I don't believe that the global community would take action to transfer funds. Even that could be an excuse for the countries not to transfer funds.
What should be the modus operandi then, Sarmad? If you look at the United Nations report that has come out of late, it talks about phasing out of fossil fuels, tightened language on the need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And when we talk of phasing out, I mean less effort, a lot of non-effort as far as phasing out of fossil fuels is concerned. Do you feel these interests in fossil fuels and their financial accomplices are responsible for major countries not doing the needful as far as mitigating effects of climate change are concerned?
Transitioning out of fossil fuel is not an issue or not a challenge unless and until there is a will. But when it comes to corporate entities who are earning profits out of these fossil fuel industries and stuff, how would they operate? What would be some of the things that they would take forward to manage their business, maintain their business, earn profits, and then yet continue their businesses? And at the same time, countries like Pakistan, when we said we committed to decarbonizing our environment as well as reducing the coal emissions and stuff and transitioning to energy efficient sectors and using solar panels and stuff to actually bring in more energy, and then transitioning to electric vehicles. All this has been on a very slow pace as compared to the impacts that we are seeing. We need to speed up, the region needs to speed up, the global community needs to speed up these actions. But I believe that injection of money by the corporates into this side of the dialogue is also a challenge, because COPs get funded by MNCs.
True.
That's
this is a very delicate balance and needs to be, tackled very efficiently in the years to come, or else the world will see the brunt of climate change and a brunt that we will not be able to handle properly. What has been the response of the international community regarding the funding and technical assistance to Pakistan? We've seen so many pledges that were made at the United Nations, but not much came out of those pledges. We've seen other moods happening as well, countries siding by Pakistan, but action has not been taken.
You know, unless and until the mechanism of fund transfer is there, we won't receive a lot of funds. However, bilateral funding streams have been opened up. We have seen considerable amount of bilateral programs being funded by different countries to Pakistan. At the same time, there are many streams that have been opened for government as well as non-government actors within the country. However, the challenge still remains with regards to the amount of money that we need to rebuild the devastation that has occurred. And if I talk about the International Rescue Committee, we raised a pledge of $30 million to actually take this thing forward. And within the early recovery, we are still short of $10 million. That's a very minimum and a bare minimum figure that we quoted for the recovery, and the damages are huge. We're not covering the whole of Pakistan, but we're covering approximately 23 districts. And that money hasn't materialized. So what's going to be the impact? We're still working on various bilateral donors as well as other entities to get funds in so that this rebuilding process could take place and be efficient. And at the same time, government counterparts and technical counterparts within the other industries are also very eager to support. But it all depends on how the policy framework or the policy arena within the government actually facilitates this discussion and takes things forward.
Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Sahab talks about a crisis created by rich countries when he talks of the effects of climate change. The recent World Met Organization report reveals that weather-related disasters have increased 5-fold in the last 5 decades, killing 115 people each day on an average. Which regions in the world do you feel will be or are prone to the effects of climate change and will be unable to adapt to climate change? And do you feel that the world's political economy is reshaping itself, looking at this effect that climate change has on the world?
Well, as we've been saying, that climate change is not one country's problem, it's a regional, global problem, and every country who's playing their part in deteriorating the global environment is also bearing the brunt of it. Canada, heat waves. US, wildfires, storms, tornadoes. Australia, wildfires. UK, heat waves. And other countries are suffering manifold. And the developing countries such as Pakistan, they are in the middle. They're suffering, at the same time they're bearing the impacts on human capital as well. You know, when it comes to actually finding a solution to this problem, it's the the developed world needs to reduce its reliance on fossil fuel and emissions and try to create a green carbon economy, whereas at the same time countries like Pakistan need to actually adopt that model, but at the same time do in-house revamping of how our own efforts are degrading the environment, and that is contributing manifold to this. 115 people killed by climate change on the one hand, and smog killing 100 plus people every day during the season, that's another thing. Smog does not entail any developed world, it's the regional problem that we have. India, Pakistan, China, and well, I would say some bit of other borderless towns as well of the neighboring countries. But that's the challenge. We need to arrive at collective decision making in terms of how do we want to move forward when it comes to the impact. Because unless and until we talk openly about the impacts and the measures to curtail that, I don't see it reducing or making any positive headway in terms of this.
But you know, the fact also remains that there's a huge difference between making pledges and actually acting on those pledges. How can countries like Pakistan or other countries that are facing the brunt of climate change, reduce their dependency on such organizations or such countries and become climate resilient or with their own resources?
Well, you know, being efficient is one thing that we need to look at. Efficient in terms of program design, efficient in terms of being cost effective, efficient in terms of being able to implement program with lasting impacts, efficient with our strategic process or strategic visioning for the next 50 years in terms of how this thing is going to unfold in the coming years, and then being placed or being sensitive to whatever actions are being taken and being open to global transitions within technology, within thought process, within policies, within parameters, and then the funding streams. We do have enough funds internally. We have to look at strategic ways of utilizing that money to bring larger impacts. And once you showcase greater impact with lesser amount of money, the funds will influence. There is no dearth of funds. Funds are there. It's all about how you position yourself and how you showcase what you've achieved with minimum resources in terms of larger impact and uplifting the communities that are suffering because of the climate impact.
So my final question comes to all of these moods that are happening around climate change, whether it be the COPs, whether it be other moods, whether it be the recent Petersburg climate dialogue that is happening in Berlin. What success have these moods had, and do you feel COP28 will serve some purpose, or will it be again pledges but not as much action?
I think these moods have been very successful.
All right.
Our foreign minister, our climate change minister, our prime minister, they've been after this thing like anything. They've been raising the voice, and right now global funders or international financial institutions or the mechanism that is prevalent with regards to funds gathering and fund transfer, they've kind of exposed the lacunas or grey areas within that parameters. These moods have been very effective in terms of actually highlighting the disconnects between pledges and the implementation. These moods have been very successful in terms of our Minister for Climate Change stating openly that global inaction is going to lead to further crisis. So that's where we stand right now. We are doing a lot of good diplomacy.
But we can only do as much as we can. You know, there's a certain limit to what we can do, and the rest remains on the important global players to do, in fact, to make the necessary action as far as alleviating the effects of climate change and helping countries that are bearing the brunt of climate change, not for any fault of their own, especially countries such as Pakistan. Thank you so very much, Sarmad Iqbal, Head of Policy Advocacy, International Rescue Committee, to have joined us. And I hope that organizations like yourself will continue to work diligently to help countries such as Pakistan alleviate the effects of climate change. Thank you so very much, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns the coronation of King Charles III. That is going to happen very soon, and for that our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab is leaving for the UK, and he's leaving today to represent Pakistan at this coronation ceremony. Many other countries are also present, will be present there at the coronation ceremony. I would refer to what our Prime Minister tweeted on the occasion. He said the British-Pakistan relations are rooted in shared history and multifaceted bonds that have grown stronger over the decades, and that the British monarch and the royal family have been great friends for Pakistan. He has also used the opportunity to attend the Commonwealth Leaders Summit as well as engage with other world leaders bilaterally. So, of course, all the very best to King Charles III on his coronation ceremony. And, of course, Pakistan will be present there with the representation from our Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll end on a sad note rather, or as far as, you know, incidents concerning students and shooting are concerned. We have all seen what happened in Nashville on the 27th of March 2023, the 6th of October 2022 in Thailand, in Texas on the 24th of May 2022, in Kabul in Afghanistan on the 8th of May 2021, in Peshawar the 16th of December 2014. How can we forget that? In Connecticut in December 14, 2012, in Scotland March 13, 1996. So many incidents involving young children, the future of our world, the coming generations who are completely destroyed and completely, you know, removed from the face of the earth through incidents such as these. The latest being this 14-year-old boy who shot his teacher in a Belgrade classroom on Wednesday morning before opening fire on other students and security guards. He has killed 8 pupils, ladies and gentlemen, as security guard. This has been confirmed by the Interior Minister of Serbia. Why does this happen? Is this a lack of proper education by the parents, by the society? Is it giving undue preferences, or maybe giving a certain freedom to carry arms and ammunition, such as in the West, such as in the United States? We need to change our tactics. We need to make our youth more responsible, so that they do not carry out incidents such as this that has happened in Serbia, such as all those that have happened in the past few months and years. We need to be a more responsible society, a more responsible world. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.